And I expected 1 or 2 people to respond, and instead I had, I think, 15 or 20 people responding to this message. And I mean, obviously, I was not the only person feeling that way, teaching myself to code.
Time for lunch.
All right, so let's get started. Welcome everyone to today's lightning lunch. I'm super happy to be here today for the DPS product school and talking today about self-learning to code, or teaching yourself to code, and how that can actually be fun. So the format of this little lightning lunch talk today will be a combination of my own journey into tech and also the founding story of Codom. So to start out, let me just give you a brief overview of who I am so that you have an idea of who's actually talking to you today. So you can basically find me at the intersection of these 3 circles. So on the one hand, we have tech, and with tech, I mean tech startups, tech environments. So for me, I started my tech journey straight out of business school, actually. So I graduated from business and then joined a fintech company in the Silicon Valley for a very first data science job. And ever since then, I sticked with young companies, startups. So after fintech, I moved to legal tech in Munich and currently working on education technology. And I'll tell you about that one more throughout this talk. So then on the other hand, we have psychology, and this is not necessarily because I studied psychology, but more because I find it super interesting. So that first job, that data science job in the fintech company, was actually a behavioral data science job. I'm also a certified systemic coach, and just these topics of goal achievement, motivation, what drives people to reach their goals, to do certain things, is what I found very, very interesting. And yeah, in the last circle, we have entrepreneurialism, which also very nicely pulls these 2 other circles together. So as I said, I've always been more of a startup-y person, always in young environments, dynamic environments. And then, yeah, goal achievement and those topics, I'm combining them now with Codom. So Codom is the new venture that has recently been launched in its prototype. And it's a platform for people that are teaching themselves to code. And what we do is that we combine people, we match people based on their learning goals to take on the learning journey with a peer or with a coding buddy. So that being said, let's dive right into the topic of coding, and why it's such a hot topic at the moment, or well, at the moment and since a long time, and why you should consider it, or why you probably are considering it already. So why I also want to talk about why coding, I'm sure most of you are aware of all the pros and benefits, and why you should at least have considered getting into coding, is not just to tell you something new, but also to remind yourself, if you're already in the coding journey, in the learning journey, why are you doing this? Because asking yourself, why am I doing something, is a quite motivating factor. So attaching emotions to why, like to a self-set goal, is quite a big driver. So let's have a look at why coding is awesome and why you should stick to it. All right. So I think it's nothing new for any of us to say that that technology is shaping our society, is driving our, well, daily life very much. And in terms of job security, we don't see any change of this in the next years to come. So there is, if you enter tech, you'll be quite safe with finding a secure job for 10 plus years. At the same time, because there is such a huge move and such quick changes with technology, there is a big demand for talent, and actually there's a huge shortcoming of talent. And because of that, the salary perspectives and the benefits are quite awesome. So companies really it's a competition of who gets the best techies, the best developers, and not just the best ones, just getting any decent ones. You can, when you have a decent level, you can really get started in a job with a good salary and with some nice benefits with most companies, with the smart companies at least. Then of course, it's location independent, and I think this is a matter of personal preference, but for me back then, it was really a important factor to know, okay, I can work from wherever I want. Many people choose to go into freelancing, working from, I don't know, an island or wherever from at home makes a big difference. But I think in 2022, many jobs are it's kind of getting the status quo. On top of that, if you're generally a curious mind, a curious person, you want to stay up to date of what is driving our lives, our world. It's a topic that you would want to get into, stay up to date, just knowing for yourself what's going on. And of course, you stay relevant for the job market, because once you learn to code and once you build those foundational skills, you will remain interesting. You know how to take on new topics, how to learn new things, and just stay in that domain. Then, of course, if you want to learn to code, it should not only be driven by salary perspectives and working remotely, but also you should find some fun within that task. And I actually think it's quite fun and, of course, also challenging, which is also a big internal or intrinsic motivator to get into coding. And lastly, why do we see so many people shifting into tech nowadays? Not just because of all these benefits we spoke about, but also simply because it is possible. So anyone really can learn to code these days. You don't have to study it at university. It doesn't have to be your very first job. You know, you can be 30, you can be 40, you can be a physicist, you can be a dolphin trainer. As long as you have a stable Wi-Fi or internet connection, you can Google how do I learn to code, or Python course for beginners, and yeah, you'll find anything online, and anyone can learn to code. And having said all of this, it sounds all very exciting and shiny. And if you haven't yet, you should want to start tomorrow or today to learn to code. However, as with any goals that we set ourselves, teaching yourself to code without a mentor, course, deadlines, and so forth, it can be, well, quite challenging. And it's, as I said, with other big goals that we set ourselves, for example, New Year's resolutions, where we want to go running every morning, 5 a.m. We do it for a short time, maybe a week or two, and then we start slacking. And the same we see with learning to code by yourself. So if we look at the stats, let's say there's 100 people that want to learn to code today, but then there's only 6 out of these 100 that finish that course and actually, well, complete that goal that they set themselves. And I mean, this is a dramatic stat, but I don't think it's very surprising, as that's simply how we work with our very self-set goals that we take on just by ourselves without having any accountability towards anyone else. So yeah, teaching yourself to code can be very lonely, it can be very inefficient, and of course you'll get stuck at some point, so it can be frustrating. And to summarize the main challenges that we see with generally goals that we set ourselves, but also particularly with goals related to learning to code all by ourselves, there's definitely a big one with content overload. You know, we're living in the world of hyperlinks, or in the age of hyperlinks. And it's just way too easy to follow rabbit holes and suddenly end up in completely different universes and just get sidetracked on the wonderful internet with all the amazing resources that, of course, also distract us from the thing we actually want to do, and what we actually want to learn. Then secondly, prioritization is a big topic. And as I said before, same as with New Year's resolutions, you have this big goal that seems so important and that you really want to do this year. But over time, it's just a natural thing that happens. This goal loses its importance. And well, it loses its importance unless you manage really to make it a habit or make it a routine within your daily life. So either you manage to remind yourself that this is your goal and you block some time for it, or you have someone else remind you. So yeah, prioritization is a big challenge that can be overcome, but many people slack because they don't manage to make this routine where they remind themselves or get reminded by someone that this is their goal and it's important and also urgent, and not other daily things come in between and let you forget about your initial big goals. And then lastly, we, of course, with especially with people that start out completely from scratch, complexity is a big challenge because learning to code all by yourself without any guidance is nothing where you just follow a certain set of rules. So, and with any goal that takes on a certain complexity, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. And often people find themselves in this state where they're paralyzed, where their mind just shuts down and you're unable to act because of this overwhelming feeling. And that's also why it's important to, well, break down tasks, get an overview first, and remind yourself you're not the only one struggling with this. And to link this back to my own story, as I said earlier, I started my journey within a company. So I learned a lot just joining a team, which also was hard in another way, but at least I had accountability. I had to learn. So I got distracted, but not in that extent that it's possible when you're just alone in front of your laptop. But what happened to me was I left the company just before COVID, and I came to Munich to join another startup. And I was, let's say, programming languages like learning a language, and I was not fluent enough to really take a break from coding. And due to COVID, all the code projects were put on hold just after I joined, pretty much. And I told myself, okay, if you wanna keep it going with the coding, so in your free time, continue doing courses, continue doing projects so that you don't lose it. And I just realized that it's super hard, without having these deadlines and accountability to keep it up yourself. Especially also my peer group or my network in Munich was not very techie. And then you just, you lose this connection to that techie goal if you don't surround yourself with people in the same domain. And I figured, okay, I can do a few projects by myself, but it feels like why am I doing this? So I joined an online community because of course there was no meetups, there was nothing going on at the time. And I posted a message into this community. It was a females coding community, women who code. I was like, I sent a message, hey, I'm looking for a coding buddy based on these and these criteria, looking to build a project. Does anyone want to pair up and program together? And I expected 1 or 2 people to respond. And instead I had, I think 15 or 20 people responding to this message. And I mean, obviously I was not the only person feeling that way, teaching myself to code. And well, in the beginning I was like, okay, so many people responded, what do I do now? And I decided, okay, I will find a coding buddy for everyone. And then I find one for myself, and then everybody's happy and can do their projects, can do their learning together. And that worked out fine, except that I spent an entire weekend on finding the perfect combination of people to have a good coding buddy, a good match. And then I thought, okay, everybody can go ahead and do their coding. But I kept on receiving these messages of people like, hey, I also want a coding buddy. It's so hard to study alone. So that I spoke to my coding buddy and said like, hey, why don't we make this our project, that we build a matching algorithm and continuously like have people sign up and get matched. That way we have a project that we learn from, and best case, we can help other people with that as well. And that really took off quite quickly. So just a few months later, we had almost 300 female coders paired from all over the world. And this was only for Python. So we only matched people based on Python and based on their coding goals within Python. And how it worked was we'd match them, and then they would work together for 10 weeks on projects that they would choose themselves. So there was, of course, a lot of data science and analysis, but also web development projects. And some of them also just decided to take their very first course together and meet up on a weekly basis to discuss their learnings and keep each other motivated and accountable. And seeing how this well took off, and how people really motivated each other and worked together super well in achieving their goals, I understood how this collaboration is so important, especially when you don't have a team at work that you learn and work with and from, and or you don't have those peers that you know from your school setting that you well learn together with. And just to have like a brief academic slide about collaboration-based learning. So CBL, or collaboration-based learning, just refers to anything that is not just learning by yourself. So learning in a group or learning in a team of two is so powerful, because on the one hand, you have the social support that reduces stress and anxiety and increases your self-esteem and gets rid of the imposter syndrome and all that. And you, of course, also have the social motivators. So you have this commitment, you have accountability towards someone else, and being committed and accountable towards someone else is just way more strong and powerful than just telling yourself, oh, I want to do this, and then nothing happens if you don't. And of course, building empathy and resilience towards failure also comes along with collaboration-based learning. And next to that, learning by listening. I think we all know that that's a thing. If you really take input through your ears, you listen to something, it's a whole different way of comprehending topics. Of course, in the reverse way, learning by explaining, it just strengthens concepts in your brain when you talk about them, when you explain them to someone else. On top of that, you have someone to benchmark yourself against. And summarized or combined, what we can see and say is that the synergies of collaboration really increase the effectiveness, the results, and the joy by much more than two. So we at Codom always say 1 + 1 is 3. I believe that it's even much more, but just saying that putting two people together that work together towards a shared goal is much more than the sum of the two individuals. Yeah, so having realized this and having seen how many people joined our little initiative that really just started out of my own need, scratching my own itch, and getting all of these wonderful testimonials, and that I decided half a year ago that to take this to the next level, not just to offer buddy matching to the members of that coding community for only female coders and only for Python coders, but to open it up with a platform for more coding languages or programming languages, and for everyone, no matter their gender, no matter where they're from, and so forth. So what then happened is that, we launched the prototype of Codom in just 2 months ago, and it's been quite crazy to see which momentum it took. So we crossed the 1,000 signups just this week, actually, from all over the world. And funnily enough, the biggest communities are in the US, in India, and in Africa, particularly in Nigeria and Zimbabwe. Europe is also there, but I think we have more motivated, excited people in those other countries that I just mentioned. You just still have to motivate Europe a little bit. And we're matching currently on the topics of data science and web development, but looking to add blockchain and cybersecurity to the mix once we really gotten the reach to have enough people for a good matchmaking. And yeah, so people work on all kinds of different things, and it's a similar concept to the initiative that I just spoke about in that community, where people get matched for 10 weeks. And then they decide themselves, based on their availability, based on their experience and goals, how exactly they want to use these 10 weeks to work together with their buddy and reach their learning goals. So that's, yeah, the content and the projects is what they choose themselves, but they can get inspiration by the community. And just to give some user stories, they're really coming from all around the world, and the main things that motivate people is they want to keep up to date on what's going on, what's moving and shaping the world. And then, of course, all of them, I'd say, want to change their lives by learning to code, change their perspectives. For some of them, it's more drastic than for others, depending where you're from, what your background is. But yeah, it's a beautiful user base to work in, just because they're all super motivated, and it's fun to have, well, hopefully have a part in helping people reach their goals. All right, so since we're running out of time a little bit, the takeaway lessons or the things that I want to leave you with is that when you take on a self-set goal that's as big as coding, teaching yourself to code, remember yourself or remind yourself in a regular basis that why you're doing this, because that really, you attach emotions to your goals, and that really helps the motivation, helps you keep going. And then obviously I'd recommend everyone to get an accountability partner or coding buddy, if it's through Codom or through someone you know. I highly recommend it, obviously. That's why I'm promoting it. That's why I started Codom. And together, make sure to build a roadmap, set small milestones on the way. And the roadmap particularly is important to really get into that habit, to get into that routine of, and not losing momentum, not losing the motivation. Also, having the small milestones and roadmap help you to keep track of your progress. So make sure you document everything, and so you can go back later when you have the same bug, the same issue. You can review your learning, and it's easier to also see what you have achieved and reward yourself for your achievements. Again, that's a psychological thing. If you reward yourself, your brain wants to do the same thing again, and share it with your buddy or your accountability partner to live it better. Again, that rewards you, of course. All right, and famous last words. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that really is the motto of Codom. And with that, I'll close the presentation. I'm happy to get your questions. And I know that time is short, and this session will be automatically closed, I believe, in a few minutes or in 10 minutes. So if you have any questions afterwards, feel free to connect with me over LinkedIn, and feel free to shoot those questions if you have any. Thank you.